Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. Moreover, that whole generation was gathered to their ancestors, and another generation grew up after them, who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and worshipped the Baals. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They followed other gods. God will allow them to suffer and be defeated in battle because of their sin. Then the Lord raised up judges, who delivered them out of the power of those who plundered them. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and he delivered them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord would be moved to pity by their groaning because of those who persecuted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they would relapse and behave worse than their ancestors. The cycle would repeat. God raises up a judge, restoration, judge dies, things fall apart again.
Well, let's begin with prayer. God, thank you for this journey that's more than just a historical lesson, but it's an invitation for us to look at our own lives. Help us to see that we have the same tendencies of when we're faithful, we can experience great things, and when we're not faithful, we can really get in a mess. Help us to learn as we go through the book of Judges and now into the book of Ruth and prepare for the Kings to see what you want us to learn in this journey. In Jesus' name. Amen. So, I've talked about how even from the beginning of the Bible, from the beginning of Genesis, God's plan was not to just have people who were following rules, but they were designed to be people who were in relationship with God, and that was what would define them. That God created Adam and Eve for relationship. God chose Abram and Sarah for relationship, so that through that relationship they could be a blessing to the world. Now we're going to see that when God chooses people, the primary characteristic he's looking for is not necessarily their competence. He's primarily looking for people who he can have a good relationship with. And we're going to see that that's the case also as we get into the book of Judges. That they've come out of Egypt now. God delivered them out of bondage in Egypt, through the Red Sea, now through the wilderness. Joshua, last week we read, had led them through the Jordan River. They had started the conquest of the land. And in the book of Judges, we see that conquest continue. And it's interesting, throughout the book of Judges, we never really see a united Israel. We see a bunch of tribes who have local challenges that happen. So these judges that are raised up are not like kings over the whole nation of Israel. They're local leaders who come up to help them with challenges against local armies or foes that are causing them difficulty. And it turns out that when their leader is someone who has an experience of God's presence and not just information about God, that when that generation that had seen God's power, that had seen God's presence, as long as that generation was alive, things went well. But as soon as the generation that had experienced God died, and the next generation came up that didn't experience God, that's when they got in trouble. And I think that's one of our challenges as a church, is I think in many ways our Western church lifts up the theological over the experiential to the point where I wonder if we're really passing on what we need to be passing on to the next generation. Because if all we're doing is passing on information about God, then we can raise up a generation of people that don't have any experience of God. And I think that could be dangerous. So you look throughout church history, throughout the book of Judges, we're going to see that when there was a leader who caused them to experience God's presence and faithfulness, things went well. But when that leader died, they didn't go well. And even throughout church history, the same thing's going to keep on happening. Times of renewal and revival, the church will get dry and stale, and God will raise up a generation of people who have renewal or revival, who have an experience of God's presence, and God transforms churches and communities and nations during that time of revival. And then as soon as that group of leaders die, they get back into the dryness again. So our challenge, I think, as a church is to see, are we a generation of people who experience God so that we can help be a blessing to the next generation. We continue with our readings.
Next reading is from the book of Judges, chapter 6. God would raise up judges such as Ehud and Deborah, but the people would revert to sin after the judge died. The new prayer in Judges 6 is the new